be alone, being far away from other people, is a very terrifying experience for many people. It's a huge depression, uh, huge fear for many people. You know, they don't know how to handle it. In this society, actually, it has been a big problem, big social issue, uh, health issue, psychological issue. Uh, Not to know how to deal with uh, this inevitable life experience. Mm. So, due to many reasons, we happen to be alone at different times of our life. Especially when we are aging, it's a big problem here. You know, for elderly people, when they happen to be far away from their family members, their kids, uh, their friends and others, it can be really depressing. It can be really sad, frustrating. So somehow we need to be able to understand it, and even how to get prepared for such an experience, or even how to help someone uh, who is bothering, you know, who is having trouble being alone. Mm. So therefore, this aspect is very important to think about. Uh, so you may have this experience previously or even now, depending on many circumstances, because we all feel that way, to feel alone, to feel lonely uh, uh, from time to time, right? Uh, so the interesting thing is that even though some people happen to live with many people around, you know, having their relationships, many people, friends and others around, still they feel lonely. Mm. They feel lonely, that they are not connected with anyone. They are not connected with other people, even family members. Uh, so there can be different reasons to feel that way. Mm. So how to help ourselves in such situations can be very helpful for us. So that is why in the Buddhist teachings, it is directly addressed. Buddha happened to directly explain uh, about the true meaning of being in solitude, what it means to be alone, and even not to how not to troubled to be troubled by being alone. So as we can see in the Buddhist tradition, many of the monks and nuns, even lay people, when they practice the path, they practice the Dhamma, especially the meditation, it's a requirement. It's a necessary step to be alone, uh, to be separated from disturbing, distracting society. So different people can look at it differently, but the true meaning there is to help us practice the path, to cultivate the Dhamma, to cultivate mindfulness, concentration. Uh, to be alone is very important. That's where Buddha recommended going into a forest, to a cave, where there are less people, less distractions, a peaceful place, foot of a tree, like that. That is the simple meaning, to be alone. Mm. The simple idea behind that is, when we are with other people, what happens to us? Mm. We can easily get distracted. And there are other obligations even, when you are around other people, when you maintain different relationships with your family, friends, relatives and others. You You cannot just be alone there. You have some obligations. You have some duties to perform. So you may have no time to dedicate yourself to the direct practice. You cannot fully engage yourself to the practice. So that's why it is advised, especially for the monks and nuns who have fully dedicated their life to the practice, to go into places like that. It's a requirement to cultivate the mind. The peaceful environment is very important. So that is in the very basic level, in the superficial level, how we make the environment supportive, ready to cultivate the path. And then, according to this sutta, we can see how Buddha goes into a deeper level in that solitude. It is very interesting. When we think about our mind, how our mind works, what we share within our conscious awareness is very important. Technically, what Buddha explains here actually, whenever our mind wanders into the past or project to the future, that you are not alone anymore. You are with something, you are with some memories, some conditions. That's the simple meaning that you are not being truly yourself there. You know, that is to be with someone, just like to be with someone else. So that is exactly what Buddha explains in this sutra, and the sutra I shared in the email, the Migasala Sutta. This is what Buddha explained to that Migasala Bhante Migasala, the true meaning of being alone, what it means. So, in that particular sutta, Buddha explains even when somebody goes to the forest to spend this spiritual time, if that person still shares these conditions, find indulgence in the past, and dealing with the future in this way, even though that person has departed the society, being away from the society, that person exactly is not in the true solitude, or not truly being alone there, even though that person is dwelling in the forest. So that is the mental level that Buddha explains. Mentally, that person is not in solitude. So it can be like you are living with the entire world mentally, in mind, So this is what exactly we are sharing when we pay our attention to our mind, to see what happens in our mind, what's going on in the mind right now. So we can see, even though we are sitting very still, closing our eyes and closing all our senses, still our mind can be very active, like a factory. So mind can be so distracted, so disturbing, dispersed in all directions through these memories and future projections. So that mind not being truly alone here. So mind can be occupied by these conditions. So that is not the normal solitude. So this is what Buddha explains here. And in the noble path, to be alone is very well respected, praised by the Buddha. Why? It makes such a peaceful environment for oneself. But as we explained earlier, for many people it's a distraction. Many people do not know how to deal with that loneliness. So therefore it would be a very good question for us, how to find peace within that state, being alone, having no certainty. This is the meaning of going forth or becoming a monk or a nun, a spiritual person actually, letting go of all these relationships, obligations. That's the true meaning of fully dedicating oneself to the practice. So we don't have that burden. Hmm. So that's why Buddha recommended this monkhood, nunhood, for the practice. So that type of environment is needed to cultivate the path, cultivate the mind. So we need to get the idea, we need to understand the true meaning, why Buddha recommends that. So that is the reason. And again, as we mentioned earlier, when we are living with other people, when we are sharing our experiences with other people as family, friends, society, it is a way to go through many negativities. It is a natural thing. You are bound to perform your duties and interact with society, with politics and all these things. You all automatically become a part of it. You cannot simply avoid that. Hmm? You easily get caught up by these conditions. So therefore, seeing that danger, seeing that drawbacks, one appreciates being alone. And then that person enjoys it, being alone. So what can happen when we know how to enjoy it? How can we enjoy being alone? It's a good question. How do you think we can enjoy being alone? How can we appreciate that?
No depression, no anxiety.
No depression, no anxiety when you are alone. That directly means when you are with other people.
Of course, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. So that can lead to these negativities, right? Okay. Yes.
By being getting to know yourself very well and what is the reality.
Right. So that is a great way to really get connected with yourself. To do this spiritual investigation, analysis, right? So that solitude is very important, very helpful. Mm. To be with yourself is very important. So this is very essential in the practice. What happens when we are with other people? We easily forget about ourselves. We are not really being conscious about our body, our mind, our sensations, what goes on in our mind. We can easily forget ourselves, our internal experience when we are drawn to we maintain these connections with other people. But the spiritual practice is all about investigating ourselves, finding the root causes for our stress and anxieties, our suffering. So therefore, to gain this self-knowledge, self-realization, being alone is very important, very helpful. You can be very sensitive to yourself when you are with yourself. So that is why it is appreciated in the Dharma practice. And as a result of that, you can really understand who you really are. Who you really are.
I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're trying to understand yourself. So you do perform self-inspection by yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to, Buddha says here, he sees feeling as self is possessing feeling. It's easy to go into that trap, right? Because if I think of myself as, let's say, unhappy, right?
Mhm.
It's easy to fall in that trap of always being unhappy,
Mhm.
right? They're saying, so how do you get out of that trap? Because
Mhm.
perception is hard to identify,
True.
especially because you're going to
Yeah.
be blind to it.
Mhm.
It's your perception.
Right. So these five aggregates are very subtle, actually. Very spiritual, as it explains in the Dhamma, because that is because we are always dealing with the external world. We are always dealing with this, objective reality. What is saying, what is being experienced, right? Therefore, we don't see what exactly happens within this subjective experience, or to see what happens to my body, but to my mind, my sensations, my perceptions. It is the normal attitude of human nature. When we are conditioned by the world, you know, this is how we interact with the external world. So, the Buddha's advice is to withdraw your attention from the external world and direct it inward.
Well, how would you do that?
So what do you think is the technique for that?
Meditation.
Meditation, right? The mindfulness practice. Or just to remind yourself even, to observe your inner experience in any given experience. Suppose when you are going through an anger, worry, so look at it objectively. This is not yourself. See the conditional reality there. What created it for you? How it happened? So there you begin to see the connection between this physical body, the form, right? These sensory experiences, your brain, your mental formations, how you make connections with the past, or even how you project to the future. So as an eventual result, you experience this anxiety or stress. So then you begin to see this internal journey, internal process. So that process is seen as a conditional reality. So you do not identify any of these conditions as yourself, right? So you completely understand the working of this experience, and you simply learn how to acknowledge it, not to get controlled by it, not to get conditioned by that. So that is the way to mindfully observe it, in order for us to let go of the unnecessary negativities. So it's a practice. It's a step-by-step practice. It won't happen right away. So we have to have some patience. We have to train our mind to maintain that introspection. So then we become able to appreciate, even appreciate that being alone is helpful for us to do that inspection. So because when we are with other people, we don't see that aspect of our life. So that is why Buddha explains to be alone is a treasure in this practice. It's a great opportunity, and then you begin to enjoy yourself. The other important aspect, when you are really connecting with yourself, you can understand your potentials, your value, how important you are, how important this body, your life, how precious it is. So you can simply enjoy it, appreciating it. But as we are always concerned about the external world, we don't know how to enjoy ourselves. So that's a different story. It's a very superficial level when you think about this discourse, but in the practical level we can see what happens to many people, not knowing how to be with themselves, not to know how to enjoy and appreciate them as who they are and what they are. So to be alone is an opportunity, a great opportunity for you to get connected with yourself. So especially when you observe your mind, you may have experienced that you don't feel alone. It's like you are being with your best friend. That is yourself. in this practice, because ultimately it is my responsibility, it is my own effort which matters mostly in this success in my everyday life or in this spiritual journey. So therefore, we acknowledge that potential, So you become the best friend that you really appreciate in your entire life. So you don't feel being alone, So this is what Buddha teaches here. You can be with thousands of people. You can be among thousands of people. But if you really make yourself available to you, if you make this spiritual connection with you, you can be in true solitude. That means you are not really changed. You are not really controlled by this external world, other people, which is very hard, which can be really challenging, But it can come to us through this practice, understanding, deep reflection in terms of the Buddha's teachings. So therefore, it is very important to be able to enjoy being alone, So that way, you can be full of yourself, without missing any part of yourself, But the tricky point here, how Buddha explains, when you let go of all the thoughts in your mind, basically, you are truly being alone. You are truly being yourself. Even without identifying that state to be yourself, without identification, letting go of that concept of self, that is being truly in solitude. That is the exact meaning of not having a certain behind you. Yes.
That question. So, does this meaning, alone meaning that not physically alone, but mentally you are alone without attachment to the other objects or things?
Yes. Yeah. So, what matters mostly is the mental solitude. How you can appreciate it, how you can maintain it, how you can enjoy it. So it can be really valuable. It can be very meaningful. Mostly, a lot of creativity, wonderful qualities can arise within yourself as a result of being in that state. When you realize your potential, your great qualities. So it's a great treasure. So therefore, in this practice, especially the Dharma practitioners, they always find happiness in solitude. That state to be very peaceful, relaxing, calming, less distracting. So it's a very common experience, right? So in some cases, many people want to have some time on their own, right? Yeah, but in some cases, in the normal society, when people are alone, it can be very questionable. It can be very questionable. Why? It can be very negative. How they are dealing with that loneliness and how they behave in that loneliness and what type of negativities that they are creating around them, the choices and decisions they make out of that loneliness can be very dangerous, harmful, So therefore we need to have some wisdom there. We need to have some spiritual knowledge, common understanding, how to maintain that loneliness effectively. Without getting into any negativity. So do we have any questions, any comments? does not simply mean that we should not maintain any relationship, any connection with others, society, people, family members, friends. It doesn't mean that, right? But for your for your sake, for the sake of your health, mental peace, tranquility, you should be able to maintain that solitude within yourself with better understanding. You know, so that is the simple idea. Because when we maintain these relationships, there are also great opportunities to cultivate so many different qualities. You know, like being generous. To dedicate ourselves, to let go of our ego, self-centeredness, to practice, cultivate loving kindness, compassion. So these connections are very important. But in the spiritual practice, when we go into deeper levels, this solitude is very important, very essential. So that's the meaning. So we should not misunderstand this concept. Yes.
It's easier for us at this age to
Mhm.
do that,
Mm.
but for a younger person,
Right.
there's no way they could. We're thinking, how can we
Mhm.
do this with a younger generation? 14, 15, 16-year-old, how can we? All they want is a big show and I'm this, I'm that. It's
Right.
it's
Yeah.
really hard in this society to
Mhm.
teach them that. We have a lot
To
of
appreciate solitude,
Yep.
to being alone.
Mhm.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, in that age, we can see, right, in young generation, how it is helpful for them to make these connections, to allow them to cultivate and develop their skills, their abilities. I think it's okay. It's a developmental process in that age, right? We have to appreciate that. But even at that age, young people have that issue too. Some people do not know how to make friends. They have no opportunities. They have no good supportive friends, positive friends. So they don't know how to handle that situation when they are on their own. There they need to have that help actually. They need to learn how to appreciate that, how to use that opportunity for their benefit.
I think gradual learning of practice is still practice,
Yeah.
So I want to write off that question because there's a common study now, or I guess a common ideology in this day and age where if you find your purpose in life, you will be happy. Okay. But in order to find your purpose, you kind of have to think about the past and also the future because it's all about goal setting nowadays, right?
Yes.
Everything, it's all about what's the next goal. So I think as humans, we have to have a sense of purpose because if there's no purpose, what is life?
Yeah.
But I'm confused, or I guess I'm conflicted because we have to be in the present, but we also have to think about our purpose and our future. And there's always this inner battle and it's difficult. Do I just say, okay, you know what, whatever happens, happens. I'm just gonna live my life and do what I'm doing now, and
Can I say?
Yeah, sure.
I would say, this kind of goal-oriented, product-oriented thing is maybe a little bit misguided, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm thinking, what if your purpose is to be of benefit and to, do good and help your, fellow, be a bodhisattva, I guess, right? And then just do your best and just carve out some time to practice and learn how to know yourself, and then wisdom comes and you get some revelations and some little enlightenments along the way, and then things do unfold in a natural positive way, in a way that is beneficial and you feel happy, and I don't know, I feel like maybe I'm naive, but I think that's the right way.
Well,
Thank you.
according to our personal experience and when we observe the world, society, we know that we have to have some goals, ideas, purpose of our life. According to Dharma, it's okay. It's okay to have goals. So Buddha had goals, right? Without goals, we don't reach anywhere. That's of course. But the important thing is actually our goals should be realistic, right? Meaningful, truly meaningful for us and others. And we need to have some understanding, you know, this goal can be achieved, it can be achieved, it may not be achieved, right? The important thing here to understand that how people are disturbed by just being goal oriented, as you said, not knowing what has to be done to get there, to achieve your goals. Or am I doing the right way to achieve my goal? Non-violent, harmless way to achieve these goals. So those are the important things, to think about when we have goals. It's not about not having goals, but having healthy goals, positive, peaceful goals for you. Our goals should never lead us to suffering, eventually. So that's the meaning. So that's the idea of having meaningful, positive, healthy goals. So even though we talk about letting go of the past, how many things we learn from the past, right? So it's a very special part of this learning, human learning. We learn so many things by mistakes, which is from the past. That is important. But here, in the practical level, Buddha teaches us, even in this very present moment, how people are unnecessarily suffering, going through so much negativities as a result of unconsciously being in the past or being in the future. Mostly interacting with these two aspects emotionally, So this is how people are suffering most of the time during the day. What's going on in their mind is directly being in the past or the future. That's why being in the present always brings us the peace, the tranquility, to be able to acknowledge and enjoy so many things. So that is the meaning.
Can I add some
Mhm.
question for you? So I think the important word is living in the past. You should know your past. You should know what you're going to go, but you don't live in there. So for instance, if you are doing the things you're supposed to do today, if you're thinking about yesterday, what happened to you, or what I'm going to be, say you're sitting for an exam. So you will be, okay, I'm going to be done by next year, and then I'm going to be earning that much money, I have a car, so you suddenly forget that thing, and you think about the next year, your luxury life. That is, you're living in the future.
Yeah.
And the same token, you lost your exam, that you couldn't get the exam, and you say, if I did that, okay, I have this much, and I couldn't do that because of that. So you're not trying to correct it, but you're worrying about the past. So those are the things living. So you should know your past, you should know your future. And you have to work right now for the knowing the past and for the future.
The most important part is living
Exactly.
according
The
to
word living,
right?
right? Yeah.
Yes. That's the most important part. Yeah.
It's funny because sometimes I'll get in an argument with a friend, so I'll take some time to reflect. But after my reflection, I'm even more mad because I've dwelled too much in the negative part of it,
Yeah, everybody happens. Suddenly you're in the future, or suddenly you're in the past. Right there. Suddenly you go through your past memories or future expectations. So you are not living right now.
Yeah. So there are so many benefits when you are in the present moment. They can be very subtle, very meaningful, positive. Yeah.
I was thinking one of the things I really enjoyed about this sutta is it almost offers you this very simple formula
Mhm.
to navigate a lot of these questions.
Mhm.
If you're making any of your experiences into a self
Mhm.
that you're attached to,
Yeah.
suffering will inevitably follow. 'Cause
True.
then you need to defend that sense of
Right,
self,
right.
and so it seems like whether it is memories of the past
Mhm.
or goals for the future, if you can work with those in your life, but if you make any of them into a sense of self that you're attached
Right,
to,
right.
and that actually includes
Mhm.
very nicely in the end
Yes.
being in the present.
Right.
If being in the present becomes another way to construct the self, and this self that is only in the present,
Mhm.
then there's attachment there too.
Right. Yeah, how to let go of that
Suffering.
attachment. Yeah. Yeah, so that's why Buddha emphasizes on that creation of self in these reflections, because all other negativities, all problems, suffering, frustrations arise from that wrong perception of self. You know, being self-centered, egoistic, like that. So that's why in the technical levels, Buddha explains this is what exactly eventually happens. You know, so it's the total purification of the mind then. It's the true meaning of being in truly solitude. You know.
It is so hard as Westerners.
Mm-hmm.
I've only been a Westerner, so I only know
Mm-hmm.
the perception I was brought up in, but we
Yeah.
are taught from the cradle to
Mm-hmm.
be individuals, to beat the person next to us, to be better, to compete, to compete, to compete.
Right.
And we are bathed in that from the time we are born, and we don't discover until many of us, speak for myself, well, we have an outward path, and eventually the inward path comes. We
Right.
have to return.
Right.
And it's that return path that we realize the error of our ways.
Mm-hmm.
But in the West, we are given, I don't think we are given any tools to deal
Right.
with that inflating sense of self, because we are groomed for that. Every
True.
institution, from the cradle, from home to the university,
Right.
to school, every place grooms us for that competition.
That's the normal world, you know.
Is
not,
it?
Not only in the West. I mean,
It's
that's
just
the.
us, it's just the West, you
You should
know?
go to Sri Lanka.
Yeah,
it's a lot worse.
Oh.
It is the most underlying cause for all suffering, conflicts, unhappiness, even wars, everything. The self, self-centeredness, only me, myself. So that's the underlying cause for all suffering. That's why Buddha, in most of the discourses, in his teachings, address that point. You know, that's the ultimate cause of all suffering. You know. Yeah, so it's very important.
How do you detach from that? How do you detach from suffering caused from the past? So say the loss of a loved one that continues. Because I can tell myself that was then, this is now. I think that's one of the tools that I like to use. That was then, this is now. But no matter the intention that you might have
Okay.
to let go of that attachment, you can try to convince yourself all day long till you're blue in the face. But what happens when there's something that still stays, even though you know you need to release it?
Right.
Why do human beings struggle so much to release that attachment?
Because it is a very strong part of this worldly life, normal life, you know. As I explained earlier, we find indulgence, we find delight in these connections. And not only connections, emotional attachment. You know, this is what we want in the normal superficial world. Otherwise, how do people feel about relationships? You know, emotionally we are bound to each other. This is what the normal world is appreciating, promoting, encouraging us to have. Because that's the environment that people feel so protected, supported. So that's what people are enjoying. But in reality, what happens eventually, according to the Buddha's teachings, there's no such a thing. You know, even this body is not belong to me, myself. I cannot control my body. What happens to it eventually? So how can I control or expect anything from someone else? You know, these things happen according to the natural laws, causes and effects, conditions. You know, so when we have this deep understanding, wise reflection of how things work, we don't know. I mean, we know the problem of maintaining this emotional attachment. So when you know the reality, when you see it through meditation, with your mindful awareness, not just from the superficial level, your intellectual knowledge, but within your true experience, you learn how to let go of these things without emotional attachment. You know, when they happen to go away from us, or maybe we may have to leave them, you know, at times. So then this understanding of the reality, the truth, is going to be helpful for us to maintain that peace, the tranquility, even at that critical moment when we happen to lose our dear ones, loved ones. So it has to come from some understanding, you know, how these things work. Anything else?
I think you also have to condition your mind to it too. So they did an experiment where they had 25 people, 50 people, and they split into two groups of 25. They took the 25 people, put them in a room, and there was a noise that was going on in the room, and they had to press a button. There were these buttons. They pressed all the buttons, nothing happened. There was another group, the other 25, they had the noise, but the buttons worked, so they pressed the button. So then they moved the people out, and they took them to another room. The 25 people where the buttons didn't work didn't even try to press the buttons in the second room, which would actually have stopped the noise. Because they were conditioned to say, well, the buttons don't work, so I'm not going to even try to do it. So it's the same kind of idea. When you're conditioning your mind, I think it's important to condition it in the sense that this is, you know, sometimes you have to like fake it till you make it, honestly, because it's conditioning your mind to say this is impermanent, you know. And I say it like it's easy for me, but it's not, you know. But it really is about conditioning your mind.
Sorry, I don't get it.
Well, that's about the training.
It's about
You know,
training.
training, you know, getting exposed to this reality, you know, wisely reflecting on these things when these things truly happen to us. So if we are able to deeply reflect on these conditions, you know, how we emotionally get attached to these things, what makes us difficult to face these problems, situations.
And I can,
So it's all about training.
I think it's important to keep in mind, at least it helps me, that at least in a Buddhist context, to fully let go of these attachments and this sense of self would be to be enlightened.
True.
So it's a tall order. It is very much a process that will,
Step by
take
step.
lifetimes in
Yes.
life context. So one has to relax a little.
Right.
True.
You're only human.
Yeah.
I can remember when I was very young, my father died, and maybe I didn't understand it, so
Right.
it was okay to see him in a nice, coffee and a beautiful place, he's resting, and I'm fine with it.
Okay.
But I see people crying, and then others are always asking me, where's your dad? What happened to him? Where is he? Like, everyone around you makes you go crazy, because I'm like, he's fine, he was fine, he's sleeping. Why are you asking me all these questions? And like, so I just thought of that. I'm like, I didn't attach myself because I was too young to get that much attached, but I was fine. I see him, okay, it's beautiful, he's sleeping there. But people around him was crying. They're trying to make me cry too, like, where is he? What is he doing? I mean, after he's dead and gone too, they would ask me, where's your dad? Like, he must be at work or something. I don't know. Like, they want me to mourn and like, so.
That's what we call the conditioning, right?
Yeah, conditioning.
That's what.
Everyone tries to condition you.
Yeah, that's how we are trained to interact with this world, little by little. Yeah. Okay. That's a good discussion. Thank you for your contribution, the ideas, thoughts. We really appreciate that. So, I have a special announcement to make about our weekend retreat, the last weekend of April this month, with Bhante Yoga Rabla. He has been here before to have retreats with us. So please make that weekend available